All right, so welcome into the live stream today. It's going to be a big week, I think, ahead, but the weekend is going to be the one that we're watching very closely after the very short but interesting speech coming in from Powell up there at Jackson Hole. We'll dive into all of that, how this affects the market, what this might look like as it starts to play out into the markets in the next week to 10 days. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's get into it today. Before we get started, though, I want to bring up our sponsor. Of course, that's being iTrust Capital, one of our longtime partners here of the channel. If you are looking at long-term holding, which I think, in these kinds of times, this is the perfect opportunity to really dive into a long strategy of what you're doing in Bitcoin. So make sure, and also other assets. They have a ton of assets available. So all you have to do is use our link below. It's very easy. They also have a $100 funding reward that you can get to as well by using that link. And the other thing that's kind of cool about iTrust is the fact that there is no monthly fees, so there's a lot of savings there. And in addition to that, you guys get a chance to look at building up some of your tax positions, which we're actually going to start going into more tax strategies as we start to near the end of the year. And get ready, man, it's so crazy that this year is almost over. In the sense of moving into September. We are now moving into fall. Very interesting. All right, so I want to jump over to the first couple of stories and really kind of go ahead of where this is going. I will give you guys kind of at least some of my own insights where the markets could be going in not only the near term, but also toward what I believe is going to be the real case in point being the end of September. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, coming off of the meeting this morning, or I should say the short speech this morning, here's just a quick rundown. Powell warns of some pain ahead as the Fed fights to bring down inflation. Interesting thing, though, is that when you listen to Powell and what he talked about, we live streamed that. It was a short live stream this morning. But when you listen to him of where he was going, and this is something that I had tweeted out prior to the meeting, that there was no way that they would be able to pull off the gas. And the question is whether or not we'll see the 50 or a 75. I'm now seeing people even trying to throw out 100 basis points. I don't necessarily see that, even though last meeting I felt like we would see a little bit stronger hit. But I think now with what we're dealing with is, one, we're getting some very interesting points. I had a chance to re-listen to the speech, and I talked about this not on air, but after in the crypto pit when we were kind of diving into some of the plan for the rest of the day. And I feel like there's some data that either has recently surfaced that they maybe had a chance, because it was very short speech, very to the point, but they had a chance to start to digest that. And there may be something in there that we do not necessarily know about at this point that caused this type of very tentative position overall. And I think as we're starting to see this really kind of play out, a lot of people are really kind of pointing to the fact this is much more hawkish than what a lot of people thought it would be. So, of course, the remarks come amid signs of inflation that has peaked, but is not showing any marked signs of decline. Powell said the Fed will not be swayed by a month or two of data. Key word there, month or two of data. And again, this goes back to the whole point of really providing the Fed with enough information to be able to go forward. I still think, as you guys know, you watch me enough out there, maybe you're new to our channel, but if you have, and you check out some of my past videos, I'm much more of a conservative investor. I do think we are in for some pretty deep cuts. I am concerned about Q3 and Q4 in terms of earnings in the S&P. That, of course, will have a relationary effect on what's going to be happening in the crypto markets. And I'm still concerned about what's happening in Europe this fall and also China in terms of the real estate position. So there's a lot happening that has a lot of bearing on where this may go. And the reaction was pretty stark and ironic because we saw different moves. And if you had a chance to watch our live stream, you probably saw this as we were showing real-time charts. There was ins and outs. People didn't really know where to go with what they were hearing from the Fed. Here on CoinDesk, Bitcoin dropped almost 5% in value in the last 2 hours following the Fed Reserve's keynote. Equity markets also slid with crypto, with the S&P down more than 2%. Stock market had not priced this in except the last couple of days. It was because of the risk that they would be hawkish and not necessarily believing that this was going to happen. Now, I think there was a few investors, uh, and many that I talked to. I get a chance to talk to a lot of financial advisors and some big market guys, and a lot of them were kind of split on this particular situation, many of which, and I have a group that still believe that the Fed is going to pivot and work their way out of this. I just don't see that happening. I feel like they've got to really put some more pain on here before they can start getting to reprinting some money. And there are some scenarios that have played into this. Gareth and I talked about this the last couple of times we had a chance to do our macro breakdowns, is that if we see when we see job numbers start to get into double digits and we start to see the accumulating effect of what the housing market is going to do, now you're starting to get into those trailing indicators that we've been talking about that have not existed up till now. Remember, CPI, inflation, price pressures, all that comes on the front end of these kinds of economic corrections. What comes on the back end, if the correction is hard enough, if you look back to 2008, I had a chance to live through that. I got a chance to see it up close and personal. And I was running a business at that time and got a chance to really feel it. So both from a situation where we had to lay off, 50% of our people, it was a big issue around what was happening at that time. And what led into that was exactly the same kind of indicators that we're watching right now happen today. So I do not think that these things shift when you have the kind of economic pressures that are really pushing not only the economy and where inflation is, but the global aspect of what this means to the markets. And I think that is the one that is not priced in and definitely going to be a pressure on the situation. Last on here is pricing now at least as much as it believes the Fed, but it's also about Powell's legacy and his credibility at this point. Remember this time last year was when we got the Fed their first assessment on where the market was going, and they did not go in deep with a deep cut. It's why we had a run toward the end of last year. It's one of the reasons we had a run toward the end of last year, because the Feds did not correct at that time. Then, of course, they were behind the eight ball, made a lot of rash decisions in the late fall, December, and then moving into the first of the year, which caused us to really kind of correct. Now, granted, what happened here was not necessarily causing global scenarios to happen. I think still Ukraine-Russia is the number one indicator of where Europe's problems exist. And then obviously China has just been a pent-up scenario of bad decisions that eventually will play into this. But at the end of the day, I still think we are actually the worst of all three. In other words, our position right now in terms, I understand the Dixie, I understand how dollar value is running, I understand where the euro is, and I get that inflation is running rampant in Europe, but we are behind what's happening within Europe. And I do believe we're also behind what's happening in China. There's a lot of indicators that kind of point to that. Now, sure, we haven't seen commercial paper, and we definitely haven't seen the kind of scenario, but I think there is a lot more pain coming to the traditional stock market. And what that will mean to the traditional crypto markets is more pain ahead. So the question is whether or not we get down to some of the points that Gareth and I have been talking about. Mine has been that 13, 14 range. Gareth kind of thinks that we're moving into possibly, say, 10K. We've had Dr. Bear on. Jeff himself kind of talked also in the 10K. We had I feel like the Smash Brothers here recently, the team that really kind of talked. Last week we had a pair of analysts on that were still pushing sub 10,000. So I don't necessarily see we're going there, but I do feel like the pressure is now in place. And here's the bigger factor that I think a lot of people have to consider. And that is today, I think, set the tone with they know something that they're not revealing. And we've got two more data points hitting us before September, end of September. The likelihood is that we're not necessarily seeing a Ukraine-Russia scenario correct, and we don't see China actually getting better. So all of this is really kind of moving into that perfect storm that really could create some very interesting positions for you guys, because this is going to open up some opportunities. And I understand many people will say, Paul, this is not good news. But in reality, remember, Bitcoin in these off markets corrects 85 has corrected in the past 85%, may end up actually following suit of where that correction comes from. Last piece right here was hawkish Fed comments and Bitcoin derivatives data point to further Bitcoin's downside. This is, again, more people looking at where it's kind of moving to. And of course, we'll show some charts here in a little bit, and also give you some CPI print, because we just dropped our power index data to kind of get confirmation on where we're going. Here's a tweet coming in from Wu Blockchain. Forbes estimates the global daily Bitcoin volume for the industry was 128 billion on June 14th. More than half of all reported traded volume is likely to be fake or non-economic. Fake data range ranking of exchanges is shown down below. So again, this gets back into, are we seeing some very interesting positions start to paint out in the crypto space? And again, this will get back into an opportunity, I think, for people who have very strong wills of investing in risk, on risk assets like what we're dealing with right now. And this is one of those days, I talk about these often, this is one of those days that it's hard to pull the trigger on. You guys know that. We've seen red before. We all see these kinds of downslides. Likelihood is we're probably going to see this continue down through the weekend. However, I do think we'll see a little bit of manipulation there, and we may see some short trades and long trades start to try to play out. But it'll all come together in the end, and I think that is just a matter of time before we do see a bottom truly come in, whether it is Fed-driven or the market itself starts to understand where the corrections are happening. All of that will start to pay out for a lot of the people who are investing in crypto today, because this is really kind of the time. I mean, when you look at cryptocurrency, first of all, it'd be interesting. I'd love to know, if you're new to the channel, hit the like button. Love to see how many of those are out there. And then also, when you think about this, if you're new into crypto, first of all, you guys, you definitely have some balls, or ladies. The point is that you guys are doing something that many people are staying absolutely away from right now. This is where I think the millionaires, the billionaires are going to be made in the near future, because of the opportunity that resides in what's happening right now in this alternative asset class, that I think is going to continue to be a pretty interesting place to be. Ethereum complete this bearish pattern and plunge to the 1,000. We've talked about 1,000 here on the show a lot. We do and have talked about this in our mastermind group. We've talked about it all the time within our shows here, and we do drill down into this along the lines around sentiment overall. But at the time of writing, ETH was trading around 1580. This is a 7% and a 15% loss over the past 24 and 7 days respectively. We did see a little bit of a run up that we talked about earlier in the week, but definitely the pressure is in, and I think it's starting to showcase. Ethereum's price performance might be forecasting a spike in a down pressure from the altcoin sector as we start to see investors flocking back into Bitcoin. I still don't necessarily see that being the case. However, there will be some movement. It'll be interesting to take a look at where dominance is probably mid next week. That's when I would feel that we're going to get a real number read of where this might be playing. The merge operating as a buy the rumor, kind of sell the news event is another factor that kind of plays into this, because I think a lot of people are in that kind of scenario. And we've talked about this a couple times. Most likely we're going to see a dip. Yes, this Friday, this being the Fed short speech day, and what we now know, we anticipate this to kind of push through. Here's another scenario that could play into the ETH merge, and that is a scenario now of timing. Timing is really critical. What we play out in the next 10 days is potentially, to me, if I were a developer and saying, hey, maybe we should just polish off a few more things, let's let this ride, that I think would hurt the merge a little bit. It also would push ETH down, but when the real merge could come in and timing is right, it could open the door for ETH to really make a nice run. So that'll be interesting to watch on the decision process of making the merge live on the date that they're anticipating. Ethereum staking deposits decline. This is with over 70% stakers now in loss. So I think this is another factor that we've had a few people ask us about this on the show. Matter of fact, I think it came up in the last one of our normal. Oh, and I think it's Jen Smith. She's always on top of that, but she was asking about that very point, and it was whether we should look at possibly staking or some other yield alternatives on Ethereum. My recommendation at that time, and still is to kind of stay out of that particular scenario. If you are acquiring Ethereum, you're doing so to really more of a dollar cost average scenario, because I do think that's the play to take. Again, remember, people, and this is something that I don't think a lot of people are really, maybe is the front of their mind right now. This is a Friday, and I want you guys to do as much as you can, because we're going to see, especially for the tokens you're going to be holding, is I would spend some Saturday morning and I'd start moving some of your tokens onto your wallets. And not saying anything, just simply saying always look for kind of scenarios. Remember, Fridays are an interesting day when they drop press releases, and I do not like Friday afternoons, late in the afternoon, because we usually get some bad news coming from somewhere. So just as a precautionary method, as we start to see this, because the markets are in a little bit of an uproar right now, is get it onto a wallet, because that's something you should be doing anyway. It's good practice too. I think it's just something to keep you in the cycle of understanding how self-custody works, whether you do that with a software wallet or you do this with a hardware wallet, whatever route you take. If you are not using the one I use, that I use a lot, is the Ledger wallets, and I do have a Trezor as well, and I've been able to, actually I've had the Trezor longer, so, but I do like them as well. And there's a handful of software wallets that I think still are really great. If you don't like MetaMask, maybe you look at Trust Wallet. That's a Binance wallet. If you're into Coinbase, you could go with Coinbase's wallet. I don't necessarily utilize those tool sets, but it is something that you guys might want to consider. XRP is also doing a little bit of movement. The price pumped and dumped, all under this mysterious $51 million whale transfers. Okay, so again, a little bit of kind of interesting news that we saw with this kind of partnership thing through WEF. It's not really a partnership. I think this is where crypto Twitter can really start to see that manipulation in some of these markets. And I think XRP, ironically, kind of fell right into where this was going. So there was large transfers that really kind of opened up the door for XRP to make a little move. And then it just fell apart on the recovery there. So, and I'll show you a little bit on that chart as well. We'll get into some questions today as well, so make sure and put those over in on the sidebar. If you like these quick roundups at the end of the week, going into the weekends, prepping on, smash the like button, because that lets us know, should we keep doing these kind of scenarios, or you like the deep dives, maybe the interviews. Let us know in the comments below. That's always a good way to kind of communicate with us. And of course, get into the Diamond Circle. It's really easy to do. Remember, when we're doing these kinds of scenarios where we're looking at charts, we're looking at sentiment data, this is a market mover. Market movers are real simple. We pull all these little pieces of information, research, our own tool sets, and our own team's research into one place for you guys, but it's not investment advice. The idea is hopefully it's setting you on the right course to move into your next portfolio move, hopefully. 3 reasons why Binance, BNB, rallied 66% since the crypto market crash. This is another one that I like. And I've always looked at BNB. This is kind of one of those tokens that, for me, just sticks around. One is the ecosystem is really strong. It's one that I'm very interested in long term. It's also one that I use when we do see bull runs. You're going to need BNB. And it is a tool set. And I look at it much like, almost like Ethereum in essence, because it has that kind of value proposition for me. And I do like BNB. It is one that I continue to push on where it's going. And again, it's still one of the top projects out there for sure. So it's definitely one that I'm watching. And there are some others that I'm watching here. We just did a little bit of a CryptoBit analysis. We took a look at both render and ad shares. Very interesting on those. Not necessarily, and we'll show you some of the sentiment data on some of these here in a minute to kind of break these down, but it's interesting to watch the potential on where some of these bottoms might be. Now, you have to be cautious because you don't want to be buying these things if we're in a super slide, meaning getting Bitcoin down. Could we see it going all the way down to 15K in a very short period of time? remember, my strategy is pretty straight and up front is I'll go after these deep red days, and that's when I look at dollar cost average opportunities. Typically with Bitcoin, I'm looking at sub 19, or excuse me, sub 20 right now, my first entry, at least on this cycle. And then we'll start grabbing it around every $1,000 if it is in a slide. And if I pick up one buy, great. If I pick up two buys, awesome. The key is that that's where you start to really kind of lower your averages if you've been buying in at some of these higher prices and getting ready for what could be a very interesting run in the coming months. Just to go in and look at the current chart, and then we'll take a look at some sentiment. Here's Bitcoin, of course, falling, as you can see, in the 4-hour, 1, 2, 3, almost, yeah, it's been moving all the way down for a short period of time here. We've got ETH, of course, also making a pretty heavy slide. How much is off on that since that high? Did we recorrect almost all of that? Yeah, I'm 8-9% right there, so not too bad. And then let's take a look at Binance, also correcting about the same. Here's the XRP move that you guys probably saw, is this big move right here, and then that dump that occurred, and that's exactly what occurred with XRP. If you think about the growth on that, where XRP was just here recently, really was almost nothing, which is 1% over this last week. So interesting stuff. And remember, this was after the XRP move that we saw down right here, when it went really kind of from that 37-cent range into where it's trading right now at 33 cents. So definitely a good one to watch. I'll get over into the sentiment too, and I think we're going to have a poll as well. Do we have a poll coming up? I think we do. Let's see what the poll says. All right, so Bitcoin weekend. Bitcoin is going to continue crashing. Wow, a lot of you guys are still pushing on that. Bitcoin will pump and no major movement. All right, 56. We'll see how that goes over the weekend. I always hate to go with the crowd, but in this particular case, I would have to agree that I think we'll continue to see some down trends there. Let me get to a few questions, and we'll drop over to some sentiment to get you guys some openings on where the latest CPI data is. Jimmy Johnson, is Robinhood Wallet any good? Well, I don't think the DeFi wallet, it's not launched. So, I mean, if you just mean the Robinhood, the account, I'm assuming you can park Bitcoin in there and a handful of other assets. One thing about Robinhood, just remember, maybe it doesn't apply to many of you, but you can only move up to 5,000 in crypto transfer wise, in and out of there, or out of there. So in, no problem, out, problem. So that's something that I don't necessarily like, because if you wanted to go into a hardware wallet, you're piecemealing it out of there if you have any kind of investment level. Let's see, say 80K. Will Bitcoin go low this weekend? Because I was traveling this week, I'm afraid I might miss this. Man, listen, crypto is 24/7, guys. There is no sleeping. There is no traveling. There is no fun time. You have to pay attention if you are out there. I'm just kidding. But the point is really, in most cases like this, if you're a long-term play on any of these major crypto assets, you're in a good position because you're going to wait this out. If you're brand new to crypto, this is shopping season. This is probably the best opportunity that so many people that came in last fall wish they had, that have already exited crypto, maybe got their butts kicked and said, I'm not coming back in, yada, yada. And now some people, for the first time I'm hearing, are actually starting to move back in as they see blood in the water. So that's a good one. All right, She Universe. Hi, Paul. What is your analysis for BNB Bitcoin pair? Like it? I like it. I think it's a strong pair for sure. No problems there. Kind of curious, are you guys using trading pairs, and where do you do that? I mean, are you using something like, like a platform like maybe Pinex or one of those bot trading platforms? Love to hear what you guys are using the most around that. Merge trade happened. Okay, so that was the 2K is what you're thinking, Mr. Gidget, is that was the merge potential. I don't know. Again, you know my position on the merge. I still feel we're going to see a slight delay. It may not be long, but I think we'll see a slight delay. And hey, if they hit it, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So many layer ones, but the market follows Bitcoin, so the stock market follow Apple. No. So I don't know. Here's the thing I look at from S&P. S&P is really driven by macro and Fed. there is not really one specific stock that pulls that market one way or the other. Bitcoin follows S&P, which is followed by macro, which is why so many people are hanging on every word of the Fed because of its correlated response to the S&P and really the traditional markets. So, and don't forget, you've got long-term bonds that also follow this, as well as the dollar and what's happening on the Dixie. And then you have the global economies that kind of support the US dollar as the world reserve currency. There's a lot of playing, I think a lot of dominoes that kind of come into the game here before you start to see how it affects cryptocurrency in the long and short run. All right, here's a couple other questions in here. Joey coming in. Paul, do you think the ETH merge and Basel will rally crypto in September? September is going to hurt. I think September is going to be a pain month. Too many potentials for bad things. A CPI print most likely is going to be, even if it's neutral, that's going to be bad, because we already, and I really believe that we are not getting the full story from the Fed right now. Something is up, something is afoot. Don't know what it is, but the way this was done with Chair Powell today, and I know last year, I mean, they've done these reports like this before that are very short and succinct, but he has never really been, to me, this was the most hawkish he's been as of yet. He's always kind of walked it back a little bit. Now, typically, because you have those inbound questions from reporters, it usually represents a little different feedback because he drops a few more things that kind of starts to walk him off the ledge. This was a little different, and that's why I'm a little bit more concerned on this for sure. Let me jump over to sentiment real quick. We'll go over here to the CPI, jump into the dashboard, and take a look here at the over. You can kind of see the overall market just absolutely dumping right now. If we get into Bitcoin, we'll look at that specifically. This is from our Friday print, so obviously, yeah, everything is really on a downtrend for sure. ETH looks like it's really coming offline right now. It's getting ready to go under the market trend. They've been holding over the market trend. Binance still holding over the market trend. And a couple of these right there, you've got Ripple. This right here is a good example. Market trend versus what right here we see with Ripple, kind of that pump and dump scenario with Ripple. Solana under the market trend right now, which is the white line. So there's quite a bit. You guys can get to all 30 of these tokens, and we do this 3 times a week. We drop these. We're moving to a 50 token data set where we're constantly measuring sentiment, and we are eventually going to daily. So that's going to be very cool. A couple more questions and we'll rail out of here. Jeff Frisse, deals everywhere for sure. Bargain shopping is definitely happening. Some good stuff out there for sure. Do you think XRP can win the case? I don't know if it's going to win. I think they end up settling, but that's a win in essence. But it's not a win for crypto because it still leaves the SEC off the chain out there like a bulldog. Crypto Narnia, always winter but never Christmas. I like that one. That's a good one. Hello from Portugal. Whenever I have time, I never miss you. Thank you so much for being in there, man. It's a good choice to invest in near protocol. Interesting you said that. Let me jump over and show you something on near protocol. So something we do that's kind of cool on the CPI is if you go, let's jump over to the power index page. So if you go over to our AI sentiment rank, this is now live connected to our dailies and our weeklies. So right here is the altcoin, and near has been in and out of the top 3 all week and almost all over the past 10 days. So near protocol performing pretty nicely. Cosmos, of course, we saw that run, even though this right now is going to start to, I think this will shuffle a lot over the weekend as we start to see a lot of dips. We might see some opportunities too. What are your thoughts on ADA? You guys always bait me with that, don't you? Is ADA, yeah. Okay, so I don't think I need to give too many thoughts on that. I like Cardano. It's not a bad thing. I invest in it. I sell it. I buy it. I trade it. It's an asset that I'll move in and out of. You know my thoughts on. I just think it's a slow development process. Peer review is great, but I just don't think it's perfect for what's happening right now. I know there's a lot of promise of that project to become something huge. And right now, I just feel like that's what it is. But many of these are that way. Solana is that way. Avalanche is that way. So you have to kind of choose which one you believe in most. And right now, and I know that Charles came on and had said, "Hey, man, we're fixed. Everything's solid." I think a lot of damage was done to the community and in general investment thesis around people who don't know a lot about Cardano. Look at what's happening on crypto Twitter, and they kind of follow the rage scenario for sure. Jerry, thoughts on Voyager and FTX or Binance? I'm assuming you mean the Voyager FTX attempt or a Binance. I'm not sure if, or just any of. Voyager's done, toast. If they come out of this, this will be through some partnership level. Between FTX and Binance, it's a toss-up in terms of the platform that I would use. I use them both, so it's kind of up in the air. Gemini is a great one. I like them. I like a bunch of them. Pionex I like. There's a handful. Pionex US, which you guys can check out. Very easy. Bybit if you're into trading. There's many out there that I think are well within it. Where we can get the sentiment data, you can go to paulbaronnetwork.com and sign up for the CPI. It's really easy. All right, you guys have a good weekend out there. Let's watch it very closely. If you are in trades, good luck to you on what's happening out there. I do think there's going to be some buy points. Be patient. Be patient. Be prudent. I think that's going to help you. Make sure and dive into the Diamond Circle if you're not in there. If you're coming over from the podcast, welcome aboard. You're here on the YouTube channel. This is the place to catch it all. First thing you have to do, hit subscribe and hit the little bell. That way you'll get notifications of live streams just like this. And if you want to reach me, it's out there on Twitter, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.